Hello students, today we are going to learn about providing instruction. It's related to learning. It's based on operant conditioning given by B.F. Skinner. In this slide, if you look at it, you see a dog and a woman. Both of them are trying to give a high five to each other. So here, was this dog trained to give a high five, or was this woman brought a dog which was trained, or did this woman taught this dog how to give a high five, or did the dog by itself learn how to give a high five? So was it purely based on instruction, or was it really based on learning through modeling, or could it be any other reason? So keeping these things in mind, we will look at what or how we can give instruction, or how we can provide instruction to the students, or while teaching to any animals or any dog or any human beings to modify behavior. Providing instruction is used by using various psychological principles like reinforcement, shaping, timeout, extinction and punishment. Let's look at what all these are. First one is reinforcement. What do we mean by the term reinforcement or the term reinforce? The term reinforce means to strengthen. For example, if you look at this picture, you see a child giving some blocks or some things to the teacher in the picture. The teacher is responding with a smile. The child in this picture is giving something, teacher is smiling. So here the child giving is strengthened by the teacher smiling. So now coming to types of reinforcement. What are the types of reinforcements? There are 4 types of reinforcement. One is positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, punishment and extinction. Coming to the first one, positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is adding something in order to increase a response. What do you add, or how do you increase a response? In this particular picture, if you look at it, a child is dancing and the mother is looking there with the hands folded. It could also be like the mother is clapping her hands because the child is dancing. So here the mother clapping or folding her hands is she is adding that particular behavior to enhance the child's dancing. So here it's positively increasing the child dancing. When the mother claps or folds her hands in future, the child will automatically learns to dance because the clapping is being reinforced to increase that particular dancing behavior. So that's known as positive reinforcement. Coming to negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is taking something negative away in order to increase a response. For example, in this picture you see the child is an autism child. He is throwing a temper tantrum, and the child, negative means taking something undesirable behavior to increase a positive response. In this particular example, the child's tantrum is being replaced by the parent giving a toy. So when the child shows a tantrum, parents give a toy and that tantrum is reduced in order to enhance, to increase a desirable, more desirable behavior. So that negative is being taken away. The tantrum in this particular example is being taken away to enhance something better response. Coming to punishment. Punishment is adding something aversive in order to decrease certain behavior. Here the term aversive means unpleasant or something which you don't like, or it can be something which is bitter or sour. For example, if you see a child sucking the thumb, it will be fine, but as he or she grows up, then the child continues sucking his or her thumb, then how will it be, or how will the society looks at that child? When the mother is worried about that particular behavior, she tries to change it. How will she change it? She tries to change that thumb sucking behavior by placing a little neem or chili powder on that particular thumb, so that the child will learn that when he or she puts the thumb into the finger, because this neem or chili powder is unpleasant to the child when he or she puts it into the mouth, he tries to immediately remove it. So you are actually trying to decrease the child putting the thumb into the mouth by placing neem or chili powder. So here indirectly it's more like you're punishing the child, not exactly literally mean by spanking the child or literally hitting him, but here it means you add something wherein it takes away that particular behavior. So neem or chili powder, if they are aversive, you remove that, and in future the child will stop sucking the thumb. It's also used with alcoholics and in de-addiction centers. Punishment is mostly used there. Coming to extinction, when you remove something in order to decrease certain behavior. If you all can remember Pavlov's dog in classical conditioning, you see initially the bell, when bell was conditioned, the dog was conditioned with a response by salivating. The unconditioned, initially when the bell was unconditioned, the dog didn't have any response. So here also extinction means that conditioned response of the bell ringing and the dog salivating ceases to exist. When you ring the bell, there is no food, that dog doesn't salivate. So there that extinction is there because the dog stops salivating. So you ring the bell, no salivating. So that extinction is mean you are removing something, you are removing the conditioned response to decrease the salivating from the dog. So decreasing that certain behavior. Now coming to schedules of reinforcement. Schedules of reinforcement are nothing but the rules which you need to follow by applying as to see which one is desirable and which behaviors are not undesirable, which behaviors you want to change, which behaviors you don't want to change. So these are basically rules. And in schedules of reinforcement you have two types. One is continuous and the other one is intermittent schedules of reinforcement. Continuous refers to where you praise a child continuously. For instance, if a child does his or her homework on a regular basis, you continuously praise him. And intermittent refers to praising that same child after 2 or 3 homeworks. It's not continuous. Intermittent is you give you praise the child after 3 homeworks, not right after, immediately after each assignment. You don't give a good to the child. You break that after 3 responses. You give good to the child. So it's intermittent is based after 3 responses. Continuous is where you give constantly. Intermittent it's not. And in continuous schedules there are 2 types. One is interval schedule and ratio schedule. And in interval schedules are time based, whereas ratio schedules are based on response. Interval schedule. What is an interval schedule? Interval schedules require a minimum amount of time that must pass between successive reinforced responses. We'll look at interval schedules a bit deeply when I explain those types of interval schedule. Interval schedules are of 2 types. One is fixed interval and variable interval. Interval, as I said earlier, it's purely based on time, and ratio is purely based on response. So interval, you have fixed interval and variable interval. Coming to fixed interval. Fixed interval is applying the reinforcer after a specific amount of time. For example, if a person goes to a doctor and the doctor asks him to take injection thrice, once at 9 o'clock, the other one at 12 o'clock, the other one at 3 o'clock. So there is a time span of 3 hours in between, from 9 to 12, 12 to 3. So here the time is more taken into account as to the time between 9 and 12, there is 3 hours, and 12 to 3. In between there is 3 hours. So no matter how severe or how worse the symptoms become or the illness will be, the patient is advised to take injection only at 9 o'clock once, 12 and then 3. So it's purely fixed. So that here the time is fixed as 9, 12 and 3. So the injection is also taken at 9, 12 and 3 and not in between at all. No matter how symptoms become ill or worse, you have to take it at that particular time itself. So it's fixed. It's no there's no consideration as to you can take whenever you want, or maybe at 9:30 or 11 o'clock or something like that. So you can't take it. It's just 9, 12 and 3. So it's fixed. So fixed interval, it's you know when you have to take. So there's you can expect as to when after 3 o'clock you can easily make a prediction as to when you can take another injection. It obviously it won't be 4. It won't be 5, it will obviously be 6 o'clock. If the doctor says it's 6, then it will be 6 o'clock, maybe unless and until if he wants to change the time. So that's fixed interval. Coming to variable interval. Variable interval is nothing but reinforcing someone after a variable amount of time. Here you can see a mother or maybe a teacher is there with a child. So after every 2 responses, the teacher may reinforce the child or praise the child, for example. So maybe after 2 or 3 instances, no matter how much time is passed, the teacher might praise the child. So here it's not time based. The teacher praises the child whenever she wants, whenever no matter how many responses the child does, no matter how many times the child gives a correct response, no matter how many times the child gives a wrong response, it's totally up to the teacher whether to give reinforcement immediately or withhold it or give it after a point of time. So variable, it's purely not based on, it's not fixed as such, it's purely you can give it whenever you want. So the teacher and the child, here it's not fixed, it's whenever the teacher wants, the teacher can reinforce. It's not like teacher can give it immediately, can withhold it for some time, or it can give it later, but she will definitely give it. So here in this case, there's no time frame as such that the teacher should give it within so and so, within this 1 hour or within this 3 hours as such. So there's no time limit in variable interval. Coming to ratio schedule. Ratio schedule require a certain number of operant responses to produce the next reinforcer. For example, it might be 10 responses, 5 responses, it could be 15, 8, but it's totally based on responses and not time based, unlike interval. Now coming to ratio, there are two types: fixed ratio, variable ratio. Fixed is always you can make a prediction. Variable, you cannot make prediction because you don't know when that person will reinforce. Fixed, you know when that person will reinforce. In fixed ratio, you see, it refers to a fixed ratio is applying the reinforcement after a specific number of behaviors. For example, if a parent says a child to clean his or her room and the child won't listen, parent will say once, she might say twice, she might say thrice, and then after that she might start spanking the child because he or she is not listening. So what will the child learn? If my mom tells me thrice and then if I don't clean then I'll get the spanking. If she is not telling thrice, then I can take it a bit light. Child might think that way. So here, after 3 responses, after the mother saying that if you don't clean your room 3 times, that is called as fixed ratio because the child is learning that it's after 3 responses, I know that I'm going to get it from my mom. If it's not 3, I know what can happen or what will not happen. So here that 3 is fixed, so that after 3, if the child is reinforced either positive or for negative. So it's fixed. Coming to variable ratio, it refers to applying a reinforcer after a variable number of responses. For example, some of you might know casino, how they play it. So when you play casino, it's not like every time you play it, you get the amount. I mean, once you play it, you might not get. Maybe second time when you play, you might get the amount. Third time you play, you might still get the amount. Fourth time, you might still get the amount. Fifth time, you might not get it. Or sixth time when you play, you might lose the total amount which you got. So it's not fixed, right? Casino, when you play it, there are chances of the responses being changed every time you play. So variable ratio is purely based on responses where it changes, it's not fixed. Now coming to timeout. What is timeout? Timeout is a form of punishment that involves temporarily separating a child from an environment where inappropriate behavior has occurred. Timeout is usually seen in classroom. For example, if a child is very talkative in class and the teacher is getting distracted by the child talking in class, for some time the teacher might shift the child's place from one to another, from first bench to last bench, or from middle to another row, or it could be from sitting from a close friend to totally sitting beside an unknown person as in a classmate whom he is not friendly with. But still the teacher realizes that he is making friends and he is talking. So what will the teacher do? Here the teacher will ask him to get out. So he will go out of the class, but there when he goes out, child should see that it is actually not distracting him from getting out of the class, and it's not rewarding for him to going out of the class. Timeout refers to the person moving into the environment, but at the same time realizing that he actually made a mistake and that he needs to change it. Now coming to behavior management. What is behavior management? Behavior management is somewhere related to behavior modification. Behaviorism was initially started by Pavlov. I'm sure you all must have known, you all must have studied some of the concepts, or you must have heard about at least these people, Pavlov, Skinner and Watson. who are based on behaviorism, or who emphasize that behavior plays a very important role and that behavior can be modified by learning or unlearning behaviors which are negative or which are not helpful for a person. So, behavior management, Skinner says that all behaviors which are learned can be unlearned, whereas Carl Rogers, he says that if a person really wants to change, he has to look both of his positives as well as negatives in order to change his particular behavior. So, behavior management is nothing but you look within yourself, a person looking within himself and trying to change. If it's positive, it's good, but if it's negative, changing those undesirable or negative behaviors to a positive one. So, the uses of behavior management are applying at the group level, because it can be applied at group level as well as individual, because even if a group comes, even a group behavior can be changed, wherein if a group, if a mob is totally angry or it's a fanatic group, there you use certain techniques of behavior modification where you employ and try to modify the behavior of the group by using group dynamics like social loafing and various other things which you have. And the other one is involving students to actively participate in planning and shaping their own behavior. For example, if I am teaching this lesson, if I am not interested in teaching this lesson, how will I react? How will I actually portray my behavior? I might not be active, I might be very passive, very lethargic, very boring, I might run in between. You never know, right? Because I am not interested. If I am really interested, then what do? I will be energetic, I will be all the more enthusiastic to teach. It will be positive. Same with learning. If I really want to change something, I will definitely put all my interest and do it. So, it is like involving students to actively participate. If you have active participation, then you can change behaviors in a positive way, more than being passive and then changing behavior. The other one is very effective in reducing classroom disruption, because it helps in changing behavior. So, it is very effective for the classroom, for the teacher as well as the child. Coming to shaping, what is shaping? Shaping refers to gradually molding or training an organism to perform specific response by reinforcing any responses that are similar to the desired response. It is given by B.F. Skinner, and shaping is based on successive approximations. Successive approximations, I will explain it to you a bit later, but shaping says shaping is purely based on modeling as to how you see a role model or a model. Then you try to apply that and then you follow that particular behavior step by step, and then even you try to change that particular behavior or try to overcome that. For example, if you are scared of snakes, then what do? If you have a role model, or if you like Shah Rukh Khan, and if Shah Rukh Khan is putting all those snakes on his head and his hands, and he also shows that he is not afraid of snakes, and you are so afraid of snakes, but you still like Shah Rukh Khan, then what do? You also try to get rid of that fear by slowly trying to pull that snake, or try to at least get to touch the snake first. Then you try to maybe take help of your friend and then try to visit a snake park to get acquainted with what type of snakes are not harmful, and then you actually, I mean, it's step by step you go, and then eventually you get rid of your fear, because just because you like Shah Rukh Khan and he is also playing with snakes, even you want to do that. So, shaping is basically it's molding where you train yourself to perform a specific response by reinforcing the responses which you want to change. And as I mentioned, it uses successive approximations, and there are certain rules for shaping. Like, for example, if you want to shape a particular behavior, then in order to shape that particular behavior, you select as to which behavior you want to train or which behavior you want to model, and what are the pitfalls of shaping that behavior, and what are the desirable or undesirable things which can come across while shaping, and how well do you plan to shape that particular behavior, what are the methods that you use to shape that particular behavior. You involve all those rules to shape a particular behavior. So, rules are nothing but how to go about shaping, what to use in shaping, and those things. And coming to successive approximations are increasingly accurate approximations of a response desired by a trainer. For example, if a trainer wants a horse, or he wants to participate in a horse race, so how will he train a horse to to participate in that particular race? Is it like he takes the horse immediately to the ground and he says, okay, we have to go this way, this way, this way, and instantly he won't say that this is going to be a race or something like that. But when he tries to take the horse to the ground, he tries to make the horse move to the starting point of the race first. If the horse doesn't move, then he won't do anything. He will again try to bring it back to that first starting position. But when the horse starts moving or starts walking to that particular starting point, he starts to reinforce the horse by giving a treat. So when the trainer gives a treat to the horse, it eventually moves. Then from that starting point, it moves slowly, gradually moves to another step, where when it starts moving to another step, the trainer will again reinforce, give a treat to the horse, where again this horse will try seeing that, okay, it's coming in a right direction. And then again from there it might take to another place, eventually to the end point where the race ends. So like that he might train the horse in reaching towards the race point. So successive approximations are nothing but successful steps in achieving or in reaching a particular goal. So here the success is at each step that there is success. So first step, when the horse is being taken, or even when the example of a snake we have seen earlier, first you looking at the snake or getting to go to or visiting a snake park, getting to know that it's not harmful or it's harmful, there you gain success little by little. So successive approximations, little by little, slowly it becomes successive approximations. And the response here is make the horse reach towards the end of this race. So that's the desired response. So that is eventually achieved through this successive approximations. Now coming to practical applications of shaping. It's used in applied behavior analysis to change human or animal behaviors considered to be maladaptive or dysfunctional. Even timeout, we have been seeing that it's used to treat maladaptive or adaptive behaviors, maladaptive but mostly to deal with dysfunctional and maladaptive behaviors. And it insists in discriminating the differences between stimuli that are and are not reinforced. What if certain behaviors are reinforced every time and certain behaviors are not reinforced every time? So when shaping or even while giving timeout, the behaviors which are undesirable should be discriminated as to which behaviors you need to reinforce. And it's not like if the horse is moving to a starting point to reinforce, and if the horse is moving backwards from the starting point, you also reinforce, then what will the horse learn? Is it like you are shaping? No, you are giving a treat. If it's moving this way, you are giving a treat even if it's moving towards left. So there's no point, right? The horse won't learn anything. So you need to see that discrimination should be there as to which needs to be given reinforced, which should not be. And it's also used in rehabilitation center, especially with kids with learning disabilities or with any other disabilities, wherein they find it hard to cope with their daily life situations, where they have their own temper tantrums, where their own aggressive moods and things like that. So there also it can be helpful. And finally, auto shaping. What is auto shaping? Auto shaping is also called as sign tracking. Sign tracking, it's similar to Pavlov's salivary conditioning procedure, and in Pavlov's it's similar to Pavlov's because it's only thing that bell is replaced by a light. So here it's mentioned it's sign tracking, right? The light, when the bell is replaced by a light, when the dog sees light, the unconditioned stimulus, the dog gets an unconditional response, no saliva. But when it's conditioned, a light is conditioned, then the dog starts eliciting a response by salivating. So instead of a bell, a light is being replaced. So bell, no, it's light. You show the light and the dog starts salivating, because when the light comes, the dog eventually knows that you will give food and it starts salivating. So that's why it's similar to Pavlov's conditioning procedure. And according to auto shaping, food comes irrespective of the behavior of the animal, whether the dog sees the light or doesn't see it, the food is always there. Unlike in operant conditioning, in Skinner's operant conditioning, if the pigeon sees the light, or if the pigeon pecks the key, then only food is given. If the pigeon doesn't move towards the key, this food is not given. So it has little contradiction with instrumental conditioning pigeons. So it's mostly to do with Pavlov's, and even auto shaping has to be done carefully and cautiously. And I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Thank you.